The Revolt of the Comuneros was a popular uprising that occurred in Castile, Spain, between 1520 and 1521. It was led by the citizens of Castile who were angered by the policies of King Charles I of Spain, also known as Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, who had recently ascended to the throne. The rebellion was primarily driven by economic hardship, political corruption, and the increasing power of the monarchy. The uprising began in Toledo, where a group of citizens formed a comunero council to demand greater representation in government and the removal of corrupt officials. This movement quickly spread to other cities and towns in Castile, and by the summer of 1520, a full-scale rebellion was underway. The causes of the revolt of the Comuneros were complex and multifaceted, stemming from a range of economic, political, and social factors. One of the primary grievances of the Comuneros was the heavy taxation imposed by the king and his advisors. The citizens of Castile felt that these taxes were excessive and unjust, and that they were being unfairly burdened to support the lavish lifestyle of the monarchy. This sense of economic injustice was compounded by the fact that many of the king's advisors were perceived as corrupt and self-serving, enriching themselves at the expense of the people. Another important factor was the increasing centralization of power in the hands of the monarchy. The comuneros felt that their traditional rights and freedoms were being eroded by the growing power of the king and his advisors. They were particularly concerned about the appointment of non-Castilian officials to key positions in government, which they saw as a threat to their regional identity and autonomy. Additionally, many citizens were frustrated with the arbitrary and capricious exercise of royal power, which they felt was undermining the rule of law and the principle of due process. Social divisions also played a role in the revolt. The comuneros were primarily drawn from the urban middle and lower classes, who were frustrated by the power and privilege of the nobility. Many of the nobles, in turn, were loyal to the king and opposed to the rebellion. This created a deep social divide that further complicated the political landscape. The revolt of the comuneros was led by a number of prominent figures, including Juan de Padilla, Juan Bravo, and Francisco Maldonado. These leaders rallied the people of Castile behind their cause and helped to organize the movement. Juan de Padilla, in particular, emerged as a key figure in the early stages of the rebellion. He was a wealthy nobleman from Toledo who was respected for his integrity and leadership abilities. Padilla played a crucial role in organizing the comunero councils and securing popular support for the movement. Juan Bravo was another important leader of the revolt. He was a wealthy merchant from Segovia who had been elected as a representative to the Cortes, the Spanish parliament. Bravo was a fiery and charismatic speaker, and he used his position in the Cortes to advocate for the rights of the comuneros. However, he soon became disillusioned with the parliament and resigned his position to join the rebellion. Francisco Maldonado was a lawyer from Valladolid who became one of the most influential figures in the revolt. He was an eloquent speaker and a skilled strategist, and he helped to organize the military efforts of the comuneros. Maldonado was particularly effective in raising funds and securing supplies for the rebel forces. The rebellion began in Toledo in April 1520, when a group of citizens formed a comunero council to demand greater representation in government and the removal of corrupt officials. The movement quickly spread to other cities and towns in Castile, with comunero councils being established in places like Burgos, Zamora, and Valladolid. These councils began to coordinate their efforts and form a united front against the king and his advisors. One of the first major actions of the comuneros was the capture of Tordesillas, where Queen Joanna of Castile was being held captive by her son, King Charles. The Comuneros hoped to use Joanna's status as the rightful Queen of Castile to legitimize their cause and rally popular support. However, Joanna's mental instability made her an ineffective figurehead, and she was unable to play a meaningful role in the rebellion. In the early stages of the rebellion, the Comuneros enjoyed some initial successes. They were able to capture several key cities and establish their own provisional governments. They also scored a major victory at the Battle of Villalar in April 1521, where they defeated the Royalist forces led by the Duke of Najera. However, the tide of the rebellion began to turn against the Comuneros in the summer of 1521. King Charles had been busy gathering support and reinforcements from other parts of his empire, and he was now ready to launch a full-scale assault on the rebels. His army, led by the Duke of Alba, quickly regained control of many of the cities that had been captured by the Comuneros. The Royalists were particularly brutal in their treatment of the rebels, executing many of the leaders and supporters of the movement. By the end of the summer, the rebellion had been decisively crushed. The Comunero councils were disbanded, and many of their members were forced into hiding or exile. The king reasserted his control over Castile and began to implement a series of reforms aimed at addressing some of the grievances that had fueled the rebellion. The revolt of the Comuneros had significant consequences for the future of Spain. It marked a turning point in the relationship between the monarchy and the people, with the king and his advisors now more cautious in their exercise of power. The rebellion also had a profound impact on the regional identity of Castile, with the Comuneros emerging as symbols of the region's resistance to centralization and oppression. One of the most immediate consequences of the rebellion was the punishment of its leaders and supporters. Many of the Comuneros were executed or imprisoned, including Juan de Padilla, Juan Bravo, and Francisco Maldonado. Others were forced into exile, and their properties and assets were confiscated by the crown. The brutal repression of the rebellion helped to reinforce the power of the monarchy and send a clear message to potential dissenters. However, the legacy of the rebellion was not entirely negative. The Comuneros had articulated a vision of government that emphasized popular participation and the rule of law. They had called for greater representation in government, an end to corruption, and the protection of traditional rights and freedoms. Although their movement had ultimately failed, these ideas continued to resonate with the people of Castile and would eventually contribute to the growth of liberal and democratic thought in Spain. In addition, the rebellion helped to solidify the regional identity of Castile and to highlight the distinct cultural and political traditions of the region. This sense of regional identity would play an important role in the future development of Spain, and it remains a potent force in Spanish politics and culture to this day. The Revolt of the Comuneros was a significant event in the history of Spain. It was a popular uprising driven by economic hardship, political corruption, and the increasing power of the monarchy. The rebellion was led by a group of citizens who sought greater representation in government and the removal of corrupt officials. Although the rebellion ultimately failed, it had a lasting impact on the political and cultural landscape of Spain.